Hello Kindred Longevity Lifestyle Designers, this is Govin here with secretsoflongevity.com. I'm going to do this video on one of my absolute all-time favorite herbs, which I've actually not ever done a specific video on, but I have included in past recipes, usually in the form of an extract or I've made a tea out of it. But I really have not talked about it in depth, even though I've used it quite regularly for a long time, and it's very popular in certain health food niches online, especially around the superfood, super herb communities that like these things, and that is the chaga mushroom. It, by its Latin name, is called Inonotus Obliquus, and it is a very odd-looking tree mushroom. It's not actually the fruiting body that we see when we see it on a tree. It mostly grows on birch trees and can kind of disguise itself as almost like a gnarly bit of a tree because it has a very blackened, almost like a look of burnt wood, very uneven and bumpy. And you actually get growths like that on birches anyways, usually not as big. And when you're hunting for it, that can be the tricky thing, is to try and distinguish what's chaga and what's just the normal part of the tree. But either way, it's a very exciting and unique medicinal mushroom. The tree mushrooms, chaga, reishi, turkey tail, and many others that are in the polypore family all tend to have extremely medicinal qualities, in that they're some of the top immune modulating herbs that we can take. They're by and large the best ones we can take. And so it's not something you take just when you're feeling a cold, it's something you take consistently for a long period of time, if not for years on end, daily, so that you build an absolutely invincible immune system, essentially. Now, I'm all for going out and finding it on your own. However, there are areas of the world where it's more difficult to find. It's not always the easiest trying to find it at certain times of the year, and also perhaps you're just not an outdoorsy person and you'd rather spend the money to order a product online, and we'll talk about the products that are available online near the end of this video or halfway through. But if that's what you're into, I highly recommend looking up how to forage for it and discover it on your own. I'll be doing a video in the future on that. I've got some friends that are very skilled in finding it in certain parts of northern Ontario. I might go on a trip with them sometime to hunt various wild mushrooms, and I'll document that and I'll link to it if you're watching this video in the future and that has something I've shot. I'll link to it right here, but for now there's not going to be a link there for quite a while until that happens. But here's some pictures of wild chaga on the tree, what it looks like, but also what it looks like broken open after it's been harvested. Now right here I've got some chaga chunks, I guess, that I've boiled once, and I'm going to boil more times because you can boil them multiple times if it's in very large chunks like this. If you powdered it down, then you'll probably only get 1 or 2 boilings out of it. However, because it's so dense, when it's a chunk like that, when you boil it once for, say, 2 hours, you still haven't gotten to the center of it, and there's still lots more to be extracted from it. So this is a chaga a friend of mine harvested, and once again that's just the same thing. And it's in chunks, and you can get it in chunks from Mountain Rose Herbs if you prefer to go the cheapest route. I mean, the absolute cheapest route is to find it yourself, because it's just the cost of your time. But if you want to go for bulk in terms of quantity and make the tea yourself or make an alcohol extraction yourself, I'd recommend going through the link below to Mountain Rose Herbs, but it's about $30 a pound there. But just like any chitinous, dense tree mushroom, it requires a lot of extraction time, anywhere from 1 to 2 hours to get the dark coloring into the liquid, and it's a very pleasant flavor, unlike some of the other tree mushrooms, in that it has a vanilla-like flavor. The stronger you make it, the stronger that vanilla flavor is going to be, and so it synergizes very well in drinks if you're making like almost like eggnog or any kind of chocolate smoothie based drink. And as you know, vanilla goes very well with a whole wide range of things. By traditional Chinese medicine standards, chaga is considered a qi tonic, if we were to talk about the 3 types of tonic herbs, being Jing, qi, and Shen tonics. This is similar to reishi mushroom, and this is because the lungs, which are considered a major organ system that works with the qi energy, is the seat of the immune system, at least from the metaphorical Chinese standpoint. And because chaga works so well on the immune system, as well as reishi and the other tree mushrooms, that's generally what they get classified as. That does not mean, however, that it doesn't greatly and beneficially affect both Jing and Shen. Chaga's Jing building or Jing preserving qualities come from its ability to protect the genetic material of our body. It actually contains superoxide dismutase as well as other factors within it that help boost our body's own production of it. And if you aren't familiar with that, SOD or superoxide dismutase, and it's the last line of defense against free radicals that want to damage our genetic material on the cellular level. So that antioxidant interacts with free radicals and breaks them down to hydrogen peroxide, and then catalase, which is another essential antioxidant, then breaks that down into oxygen and water. And one thing we recognize about virtually all wild foods, especially wild herbs, is that when you compare a wild food to its hybridized or farm-grown counterpart, which can be done with reishi. I'm not aware of chaga being grown in sort of a farm-type scenario, but the wild reishi compared to farmed reishi, the wild reishi is always seen as more Shen building, and the same can be said for chaga, except that we only have the wild chaga, so any chaga we take has that Shen building quality, which is that wild nature that we don't really get from conventional foods, from hybridized foods. Now, an interesting thing with chaga is that it takes many decades for it to form to its full maturity, for it to be harvested in the best quantity. And that's something that's very interesting with herbs, certain tonic herbs, is that we don't have many foods in our diet at all that we consume with great age. So if you think of most vegetables, they're harvested within the 1 year of them being planted and grown as a plant. If you think of sprouts, it's very young. If you think of even most farmed animal foods, even when they're done very sustainably, they're never more than a few years old when they're sent to slaughter. Chicken eggs, they're very young. Cow's milk, the cows are generally never more than a few years old while they're producing milk. But chaga is our chance at consuming something that is many decades old, usually 1 to 2 decades at least. Now you might think this just sounds hokey and there's no real scientific validity that I can give to the benefits that could come from consuming something that's older, but it's more of a philosophical idea you can think on and just appreciate how that could play into your health, even if it doesn't make sense to you. You don't have to even pay attention to that information because there's so many other proven scientific benefits to chaga that we can readily be aware of. So just like any herb, chaga has water-soluble nutrients within it as well as some oil-soluble nutrients within it. And many herbs have a predominance of one type or the other, and they do best with one form of extraction or the other. Many herbs, however, have an equal balance of both types of nutrients, and they are best consumed with an extraction method that uses both methods. So a very popular method that's gaining ground is dual extraction methods, which is simply you boil whatever herb for however length of time that herb is generally required to be boiled for. With chaga it's 2 hours, so a very long and strong decoction. And after it's been boiled, it's then extracted in alcohol for 2 weeks to a month. And ideally that's a very high alcohol concentration because you're going to boil down the hot water extraction down to a very small amount. And while it's extracting the alcohol, you might even freeze it so it doesn't go bad. And then after the alcohol extraction's finished and you're throwing away the leftover sediment, you mix the alcohol with the water. So you need a strong alcohol because it's going to be diluted by about half. And you still want it to be strong enough alcohol that it's able to be preserved. And there you have a dual extraction. You could dry that out completely and have a powder. You'd have no alcohol left and you'd have a dual extracted powder. Or you could put that in tincture bottles and save it and use that dual extraction to get the benefits of both the oil-soluble nutrients as well as the water-soluble nutrients. This is the ideal method for extracting virtually all tree mushrooms, all polypore, all medicinal mushrooms. But it's also a great way to do it for things like ginseng, even hushuwu. That's a great way to do it. Now it's not completely essential, but that's just how you can get the most bang for your buck. And the water-soluble nutrients in chaga are generally going to be the immune-modulating qualities. The oil-soluble components are the more Jing-preserving, Jing-building qualities. And those water-soluble nutrients are going to be the most immune-modulating components. So things like the polysaccharides, the beta-glucans, and the polyphenols are largely extracted into the water, whereas the oil-soluble nutrients are going to be the ones that have that genetic protective quality, even repairing the genetics to a certain degree, and that's the betulinic acid, the betulin, phytosterols, terpenoids, and the melanin. One thing I'd put out there as caution is if you're going to be making the tea, it's not my preferred method of consuming it because the high antioxidant content, it's the highest of any food within reason. If you were to compare it to, the top ones, cacao, cinnamon, some of these spices, it's up there. The only difference is quantity, so you could much more easily consume a large quantity of chaga than you could, cinnamon. When you're drinking a lot of chaga, because it's so rich in antioxidants, it stains the teeth very easily, I've found. I prefer the dual extracted method in alcohol so that I can just put it in my mouth and it's not washing over my teeth in that way. In addition to its medicinal benefits, it's also a great source of a wide variety of minerals, so it has that nutritive quality that all tonic herbs have along with their medicinal qualities. And it contains everything from barium, bismuth, boron, chromium, copper, germanium, manganese, selenium, and zinc as trace minerals. And then as macro minerals, it contains calcium, cesium, a very highly alkaline mineral, by the way, iron, magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, rubidium, silicon, and sulfur. So those are all excellent minerals, and a large portion of them are very alkaline. So if you're really wanting to get a lot more alkaline minerals in your diet, this is a great way to increase the consumption of those. It's a great source of zinc. So if you're vegetarian or vegan, it's excellent for that because a lot of plant foods tend to be very deficient in zinc. And it should also be noted that the outside part of the chaga, which is that burnt, dark, blackened aspect of it, which is the part that has that strong anti-cancer component to it, and that's also a lot of where the Jing building component is housed. Traditionally, that was often chopped or broken off the chaga, and it was largely the corky, golden-colored inner part that was made in tea regularly, and the black part was only included in the tea when someone actually had a specific problem they wanted to have addressed by that. I haven't seen any evidence that the black part actually causes a problem if you're consuming it if you don't have, digestive cancer. But if you're going to be doing it for a long period of time, it could be beneficial to include that for a period of time, but then once you've gotten to the habit of using it within a few months, maybe cut back and just use the corky inner part and then go back and forth between using it both ways. Because there's generally a lot of wisdom within the way things were traditionally consumed, and that's just an easy practice to do if you're harvesting it yourself. So I actually mentioned something there that I didn't mention earlier, is that it has a profound anti-cancer, anti-carcinogenic quality to it. It is one of the top herbs I'd recommend for anyone undergoing any kind of cancer therapy. As an addition to it, generally all the immune modulating mushrooms are excellent for cancer patients. Reishi is a big one prescribed in China by Chinese doctors when someone is having chemotherapy. But chaga is definitely the absolute best one for digestive issues, specifically digestive cancers. In China, in the traditional Chinese system, chaga was actually considered the king of mushrooms, and reishi's called the queen. And Sir Thrival has actually put together a great combination of two different tinctures, both dual extracted, of chaga as well as the reishi. Reishi is a very bitter herb, so if you're making a tea or you're doing this, you just have to be prepared and know that it's going to be quite strong tasting. Chaga, however, is delicious, and they do a unique thing at Sir Thrival where they mix it with vanilla and maple syrup after it's been dual extracted, and you end up with this absolutely amazing color of extract that is just this dark color that is so potent. So just do a squirt under the tongue, hold it there, mix it around in your mouth. Ideally leave it there for 90 seconds, but for the sake of talking in this video, I'm just swallowing it right down. So when I first got this, I was actually taking it many times a day just because it was so tasty. But use it ideally over a long period of time, so 2-3 squirts a day of the tincture for weeks on end is the ideal way to go. All of Sir Thrival's tinctures are in Myron glass, the absolute best way to store any kind of extract. So you definitely want to hang on to the bottles afterwards and clean them off, maybe take the labels off, and keep your own tinctures or other liquids in these things that you want to have preserved for as long as possible, because it blocks out a lot of light that can damage an herb. And yeah, it's always good to just have them on hand for anything. If you prefer a powdered extract, you can use in smoothies and other recipes more easily. I'd recommend trying out the Hyperion Herbs Chaga. You simply use about half teaspoon to a teaspoon per day. And this is a hot water extract, so it doesn't have that dual extraction method, but it's very immune boosting. And if you're the type of person that doesn't use something if you have to do a lot of prep with it, you sometimes buy an herb from Mountain Rose Herbs and it's just sitting in your shelf, because you have to go through the whole process of extracting it or boiling it or what have you, then the extract that can easily be thrown into a smoothie that you're just going to zip up in the blender is the most economical way. Many people are confused by extracts that are dried in a powder form. They think that it's just the powdered herb. It is not. It's when you've made an extract of it, whether alcohol or water extract or both combined, and then dehydrate it down to a powder. So it's literally the extract of a tea out of that herb. And in the case with Hyperion herbs, they always label to what ratio the extract is. So it'll say something like 10 to 1, meaning it took 10 pounds of the whole herb to make 1 pound of this extract. So all that herb quantity was boiled into tea, dehydrated down, and the powder that was left is many times less than the original herb, but you've taken the essence from the herb and you don't have all the extraneous fiber and other things that you don't need in terms of getting the medicinal effects from it. So I hope that was very informative and I piqued your interest in this herb, this mushroom, that is one of the top herbs on my list of most adaptogenic, most easily used herbs. It is probably one of the easiest and one of the best because of its flavor. It's very palatable. Let me know in the comments below your experiences with chaga. I'm interested in hearing that. Check out the links below for either the whole chaga, the surthrival dual extraction chaga, as well as the reishi, and then also Hyperion Herbs has both chaga as well as reishi. They have the reishi in the extract powder, much like the chaga, but also reishi spore oil. So you can find and read about any of those products at the links below. And like, favorite, and share the video if you feel so inclined. So with that, I'll talk to you next time. Take care and embrace life without limits.